Hey, what's up guys? Hope you're all doing well, and today we're going to be checking out some of your gaming setups. And personally, this is something that I'm really interested to check out. I love checking out different gaming setups and getting some ideas for my own setup. So hopefully this will be interesting to you guys. Maybe you can get some ideas for your own setup as well. And we do have quite a few submissions here, more than I can cover in the full video. So I'm just going to scroll through these and take a look at the interesting ones. So yeah, let's start here. This one is from Alex. He submitted 16 minutes ago. He said, started as a budget setup, then I gave up on keeping track of how much I actually spent. So it's a bit of a cyberpunk inspired setup here, which is pretty cool. I like seeing themed setups. He's got some blue, he's got some yellow. The keyboard is probably the smallest keyboard that, okay, I'm not going to say the smallest I've ever seen, but man, how do people use these practically? I think it's a 40% keyboard, ortholinear as well. Personally, I could never imagine using that for everyday use. I think it's maybe a bit too much of a compromise for me. Overall, this setup looks pretty well thought out and put together, really comfortable to use. The main star of the show, I think, is going to be that PC. That looks absolutely awesome, so great job there. Cable management is a bit iffy. I mean, it's okay, but you got this cable running off the wall. That's probably to a light or something, but I have no idea. One thing I would definitely change would be the color of the wall. I don't like that color. It's kind of like a light pale blue. I would just go neutral tone, like a gray or something. But again, personal preference. Overall, really clean setup, and yeah, it looks like it's working for you. And then we have a setup here from Rasmus, which is awesome. It's kind of like a esports or first-person shooter focused setup. So he's got the Acer Predator 240Hz. That's mounted on a arm by the looks of it, unless the camera angle is a bit deceiving. G Pro wireless mouse and G Pro wireless headset. Personally, in terms of optimizing a setup for first-person shooters, I don't think it can get much better than this. Like, there's just so much room to move. There's no distractions, super clean. Maybe adding a second monitor could help, but again, that comes down to the budget. And then I love the ITX PC build here, which is a Dan A4 using a GTX 1660 Super, Ryzen 5 3600 with a B550 ITX motherboard. So there's a closer look of the PC build there, nice and compact, 7-liter build. GTX 1660 Super, so that's going to be no problem at all powering those esports titles. It's one of those setups that I could picture myself just sitting down and playing the games that I play and just being really comfortable. Ergonomically, this looks like it works really well. All right, and the next up we have a really interesting setup from Morgan Drake. They say old meets new streaming setup. So 120 FPS 1200 by 900 monitor, 60 FPS VHS webcam, and my dad's microphone from his radio station in 1965. Dan Case A4 in the background, that's off to the right there, and a mixing board from 1990. Let's take a look at this. All right. What is going on here? At first glance, it kind of just looks like a display piece, like it's not actually usable because you don't really know what's going on. But yeah, it looks like he's actually using this as a streaming setup, which is absolutely nuts. So he's got OBS running on that secondary display here. And then he's got this old display. I have no idea what it even is. 1600 by 900 resolution, 120 FPS. That's great. But yeah, no doubt a really interesting setup. I think what makes it most interesting for me is that you've got, I think, a G Pro wireless mouse, or sorry, that could be a G703. So you've got some really expensive good components, like a Dan A4 in the background. That's like a $200 case. But I guess it's exactly what you say, right? Old meets new streaming setup. But yeah, it's quite a clash of components. I'd personally be really interested to see, the quality of your stream. Like, what is the video quality that you're getting here? No doubt, I think the audio that you're getting from that old microphone would still be quite good. But yeah, would love to see this stream in full force. So please leave me a link to your stream down below. I would love to check this out. All right, now scrolling down a bit, we've got one from Sean Davin. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. He says, my budget minimalist Ghost S1 setup, at least until I can snag an RTX 3070. I don't know if a budget and Ghost S1 can be said in the same sentence. But it looks like he's got B450i, okay, so Ryzen build. I definitely wouldn't call this a budget setup, man. I think you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice. You should be really proud of how well this is presented, at least. I mean, this is super clean. I think the way that you've got this window, the ultra wide, and that desk is like just the perfect length. So yeah, really great job. And I also really love how you integrated the ITX PC into your setup. I think this is one of those setups where a mid tower would kind of be a bit overbearing. You'd kind of have to push the monitor off to the side here. Or put it on the floor, but even on the floor, it doesn't look like there's much space there. So wouldn't really call this a gaming setup. It doesn't really look like it's kind of optimized for gaming, I would say. This looks more like a setup that's kind of optimized for productivity and minimizing distractions, which I can totally get behind. Taking a look at the PC build here, it looks like he's got a GTX 1070 and the Ghost S1. Super clean build. He's using the Alpenphone Blackridge CPU cooler, which I've done a review on previously. Looks like he's got some custom cables hooked up to the SF600 Corsair Platinum power supply. And he's mentioned that he's kind of waiting for an RTX 3070 to drop in at that upgrade. So yeah, really great job here, man. Super clean setup. And yeah, I can imagine getting a ton of work done there on a daily basis. All right, and scrolling down a bit, we've got another setup here with the Ghost S1. And this setup is one that I can totally imagine myself using. So he's got compact 60% keyboard, big mouse pad. It looks like he's got the G Pro wireless, I believe. I believe that's the G Pro wireless. And then he's got the Alienware AW2721D, so that's 1440p 240 Hz. He's got the Shure SM7B on a boom arm there, so he can kind of just pull that in when he's talking to his teammates or doing some voiceovers or whatever. Personally, I think this is a really kind of well done single monitor setup. Everything is just done really well and it looks really kind of inviting. Let's take a look at his PC here. So it's the Ghost S1. He's got a large top hat on there. It looks like he's kind of going for an ocean theme, and he's even integrated that into his cables, which is super, super cool. Love that. So what he's got is the EVGA hybrid 3080 XC3. But I'm not sure how he's using that with the top hat. I think it's only a 120mm radiator, but I could be wrong there. Okay, so I was actually incorrect. The hybrid card from EVGA, the RTX 3080 XC3 hybrid, actually uses a 240mm radiator. So he's probably going to get some really good thermal performance there. So that's kind of taking up all of the radiator space at the top of that case. Overall, super, super cozy setup. The only thing that I would recommend is kind of improving the lighting of the setup. I would definitely integrate some kind of monitor backlighting or some top lighting here. I'm not sure if you actually have that and you just turned it off for the shot, but that's something that I would personally recommend. I don't think this little lamp on here is kind of going to be enough to reduce eye strain and be using that for long periods of time at night. And I think this is another setup here from Jayzo where I think just proper lighting could just really take this setup to the next level, make it a lot more comfortable to use. I mean, I don't know how you guys are not burning your retinas inside out. Like if I just turn all the lights off on my setup and use a monitor like this, I can't game for more than like 30 minutes, but hey, maybe that's just me. He says, first build after 10 years of Xbox, Ryzen 9 5900X cooled with liquid cooler, 32GB of Corsair Vengeance memory, RTX 3080 looking absolutely sweet there, and he's gone for a kind of red color scheme. Looks like he does have some lighting going on, like just behind the desk here and a little lamp, but really behind the monitor is where it's going to be most useful, or maybe up the top here just to kind of cast some light in the room so you're not kind of gaming in a pitch black room. Overall though, after 10 years of gaming on an Xbox, jumping to an RTX 3080 and what has he got here, 1440p 144Hz monitor, that's going to be a huge difference. Like going from 30 to 60 FPS up to 144 FPS plus. Yeah, that's going to be a sick upgrade. And then next up, we have a bit of a dual setup thing going on here. So we've got a gaming setup on the left, and then we have what looks like a bit of a workshop. So he's got 3D printer over here, electronic components, overhead cam, and a bit of a work mat. Looks like he's working on a controller or something like that. But let's go over his build. So it's in the NZXT H1. And then for the screen that he's got in there, he said he managed to salvage that from a VR display that has since been discontinued, but that's pretty cool. Looks like he's kind of 3D printed his own mount there, which is pretty awesome. And then just going back to the entire setup here, there are probably a few things that you could do to improve this visually and make it a little bit more inviting or maybe more productive. I've had setups like this in the past with 3D printers, and yeah, it can get really messy, especially when you're trying to clean the prints and, you know, clean the plate and do all of that. I get it, but you could definitely clean up some of this stuff on the floor and get some storage solutions for that, for example. And then this curtain thing on the left, it kind of reminds me of a hospital, not gonna lie. But yeah, overall, no doubt a practical setup for you, but there are ways that you could definitely improve this visually. And this here is actually a really interesting setup. So he says, rocking a minimal setup, desk is tiny where I'm living right now. I feel like I've made the most out of this space I have. And overall, man, I would definitely have to agree with you. You've made some really good use of this space with such a tiny desk. I mean, that's barely enough room to kind of cram your chair in. But one thing that is a game changer if you are someone who has a really tiny desk like this is a monitor mount. I mean, if you had this monitor on its generic stand, your keyboard and mouse literally wouldn't fit on that desk. So just putting it on a mount there, again, these are pretty cheap, you can get them from Amazon, but yeah, that's an absolute game changer. If you don't have a monitor mount already and you do have a really tiny desk, definitely consider that. Another thing I'll say is that he's gone with an ATX PC build here, but it doesn't really matter because his PC is going to be off to the side anyway. An ITX PC on the desk here would just be a total waste. I would definitely prefer a lot more desk space to move around and kind of put things on. On the flip side, if you've got the space to play with, you can do something like this. He says, not the newest hardware, but something unique. So what he's done here is really interesting. So he's got the Meshify S2, and he just says, yeah, it's modded, Fractal Design Meshify S2. Man, this guy modded the absolute crap out of this PC. Like, how do you mod this case to fit a radiator at the rear there? Like, I'm still looking at this going, how does that even work? Like, how did you even do that? I would personally love to see a lot more pictures of this build to see kind of how you did this. Oh, the cable management is absolutely awesome. Super, super clean. At first glance, I definitely did not think this was a Meshify S2, but yeah, you've done some really, really incredible work here, man. So great job. All right, and then this is my kind of setup here. All right, so we've got an NKSM1 off to the left there, triple monitor setup. He says, if you hate mismatched monitors, look away now. But honestly, they're not too mismatched. I think that's quite fine, man. So the NKSM1 off to the left there, 6700K, and it has an RTX 3080 as well. So damn, you guys are actually getting your hands on RTX 30 series cards. That's pretty good. Lighting in the room looks good. Overall, ergonomically, the kind of everything just kind of works. Then he's got a TKL keyboard. Not sure what keyboard that is, although it looks like a K65 or very similar. Big mouse pad, that's great. And yeah, overall, very functional and very tidy. One thing I'll say is that your Discord is absolutely blowing up, my dude. Like, how do you game when you've got this many notifications and things beeping at you constantly? Like, goddamn, is this how people are using Discord? You got that many friends and channels? I have like 3 contacts on my Discord, and I'm not even kidding. But yeah, overall, really cool setup. Let's take a look at his NKSM1 here. So, okay, cool. So that's really interesting. He's got a pretty thick RTX 3080 in there. It's the 4Lu-in-3, and he actually had to use low profile connectors to get that to fit in there. But definitely a really good use of space. Absolutely love my NKSM1, and I think you've made some really good use of it there as well. And I'll just cover this setup real quick because I think it's a pretty good, minimal, clean setup, not a whole lot going on. I've always mocked small form factor PCs in the past. Today, I can happily own one that easily fits in my backpack. All thanks to you, Ali. Your videos guided me in every step. Well, thank you, man. Thanks for the kind words. Really glad that you were able to build in the Sentry 2.0, but it's actually a clone from Taobao. Wow, that's really, really interesting. Overall, the build is super, super compact. That RTX 3080 just sits in there super nicely. And like you said, this is kind of a portable PC that he's probably transporting between a couple different setups. And also as a Sentry clone, it looks absolutely identical to the original case. So not really sure what's going on and how these kind of clone cases can get away with that. But yeah, overall, really cool setup. Love the ITX PC. And if you guys are interested in this wallpaper, I will leave links to that down below because it's actually the exact same one that I'm using right now. And it might seem like I'm kind of cherry picking ITX PC setups here, but honestly, a lot of you guys just have ITX PC builds, like this one here, for example, which is clearly used as a portable setup. If you guys want to see the review of this monitor, it's actually super, super good. I will leave that link down below. So this guy might be traveling for work or to school, for example, and then he has a separate home setup. So he's got a Ryzen 5 2600 overclocked to 4 GHz, RTX 3070 in the Form T1 case. And I will say it's quite difficult to kind of add recommendations or comments to a portable setup because I have no idea how you're using it, whether it's for work or for school, or if it's a separate home and you're using it for gaming, which is kind of what it looks like. But for your home setup, I would say maybe the next thing to consider upgrading would be the monitors, because they are a bit behind everything else you're using. And usually I wouldn't say, you know, you need to upgrade this or whatever, but I mean, you're rocking an RTX 3070, custom keyboard build, and a Razer Viper mouse. So definitely some good peripherals and a really good PC build. I think you could get a lot more enjoyment out of that if you considered upgrading to a higher refresh rate display, for example. Scrolling down a bit here, we've got a really bright and colorful setup. Damn, let me just click this real quick. All right, so lighting here is done extremely well. You can see that it's pitch black outside. There doesn't seem to be any light at all, but still a very vibrant, colorful room. No doubt he could just change this to kind of daylight, 5600 Kelvin or whatever. But yeah, for a gaming setup, I think this looks really practical, really inviting. In terms of the PC, it looks like it's using the Ryzen 5 1600X and the GTX 1060, although they have upgraded to a 5900X and an RTX 3090, so quite a beefy upgrade there. And it looks like this setup is possibly used for streaming as well. He's got a camera here, he's got a Stream Deck. I believe that's the Elgato Stream Deck Mini, but I could be incorrect. And then he's got the same audio interface as me. So this is the Audient Evo 4. Can highly recommend that. It's probably one of the best things I've added to my setup. So yeah, great job on the setup. And again, those upgrades to your system from a GTX 1060, was it? Yeah, from a GTX 1060 to an RTX 3090, that's just like complete game changer, so definitely gonna enjoy that. Next up we have a setup from Daniel. He says, pretty much the max I could fit into a Geek N500 Lite PC case, ASUS B550i, 3800X Ryzen CPU, MSI RTX 3070, so actually quite a few RTX 30 series cards, maybe a bit more than I was expecting. But let's take a look at the setup here. Okay, so this is again a kind of dual purpose setup. So he's got his gaming setup on the kind of main portion of the desk, compact keyboard, big mouse pad, wireless mouse, absolutely love that. And then he has his 3D printer and PC off to the left here, so that's a kind of really nice use of space. Again, dual monitor setup. He's got his landscape primary display here, portrait display off to the side. And I think the overall lighting and ergonomics of the setup are done quite well. And his PC here is looking super compact. He's actually fit a pretty big CPU cooler in here. This is the Noctua C14S. So quite big, but yeah, overall pretty tidy build, really compact. Not really sure I would recommend this case. I've worked with some acrylic Geek cases in the past, and in the end, they just did not feel kind of well put together at all, and the building experience was not that great. Next up we have Project Compromise from Nines. They say, started in 2019 and finished in 2021. I had to cobble parts due to shortages, 10600K Z490i motherboard, and faithful GTX 1070 Ti, and it looks like a liquid cooled build there too, so we'll take a look at that. Case is an SGPC K99 V2 from AliExpress, painted with Plastidip. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Keyboard setup here is really interesting too. It's a Happy Hacking keyboard, Bluetooth, and G Pro wireless for the mouse. Again, compact keyboard, wireless mouse, and big mouse pad. You just can't go wrong with that. It just brings me joy every time I see it because it's definitely the way to go. One thing I'll mention though, the way the monitors are positioned with that split directly in the middle. Obviously you're not gaming across both displays, you're probably gaming on one and then viewing Discord or Spotify or browsing on the other. But just to be kind of gaming, you know, facing either angle, ergonomically, I just don't see very functional. Personally, I would rather have one display right in the middle and then have a portrait or landscape as the secondary monitor off to the side. And then for the PC, we have a pretty compact custom loop. So like I said, this is running a GTX 1070 Ti and a 10600K. That's hooked up to a 240mm radiator up top, so there's going to be no problems at all cooling that. Pump that's being used here, I believe, is the AlphaCool DCLT, which is kind of towards the top of the build there. Overall though, setup looks clean, the lighting is good, looks ergonomically quite nice. I think the keyboard and mouse up is probably my favorite thing about this setup. And yeah, maybe consider trying some different layouts for the monitors as well. I think we've got time for a couple more. So we've got this one from Stumpy at Stumpy Media. He says, Ryzen 3700X, ASUS X570i motherboard, 32GB of memory, GTX 1080 Ti in the NZXT H1. Again, there's definitely a trend here between ITX PC, big desk, compact keyboard, and big mouse pad. I think that kind of setup template just works really well and very hard to go wrong with that. And then we've got a better look at that keyboard that he's using there as well. It's the KBD 67 Lite with Milky Gateron blacks, lubed with 205G0, and also just loving the kind of vibe and theme of this setup here. Looks really inviting, really cozy. Maybe a bit on the darker side for my preference. There's not a whole lot of kind of lighting behind the monitors, but overall really sick setup, man. Super clean as well. Like there's just not a whole lot of stuff on the desk or clutter. Can't really see cable management because it's kind of like from a top angle, but I'm sure it's fine given the rest of the setup is super clean. And then lastly, we've got to give the budget setups a bit of love as well. So this one's from Gaspar. He says, currently rocking a pretty crappy budget setup when it comes to my PC. I don't game on my PC much because I've got only a Ryzen 2200G. Damn, well, you can still get some decent gaming done with that APU. He says, my case is just some random workstation case my dad found, and I do most of my gaming on the PS4. The fake plant adds maybe 3 FPS to most of the games that I play. So yeah, not gonna lie, it's a pretty budget, scrappy setup, but I mean, you gotta work with what you've got. You've got the SSDs just hanging outside of the case, which I wouldn't really recommend. It's very possible that you could accidentally knock that and disconnect an SSD, and that's not going to end up really nicely. I'm not really sure about the stands for the TV and how that's working for you. It also might just be my eyes, but they look like a slightly different height, which is not ideal. And the thing is, you can get actual budget PC cases out there for $30 or $40, which will kind of just clean this area up a little bit. But yeah, other than that, super interesting. And you said the fake plant adds 3 FPS to the games that you play, so maybe consider adding a bit more and just beefing up that PS4 a little bit. Other than that, guys, I think that's gonna do us. There are a lot more PC build and setups that we could kind of look at here. We did get a lot of just PC builds, which I wasn't really interested in requesting. I was more interested in seeing just the entire setups. This one here, for example, is absolutely sick, but maybe just a little bit too cluttered. I will leave the link to the Twitter thread down below as well, so if you guys want to see that and see all the setups that were submitted. But yeah, big thanks to everyone who submitted. It's really interesting to see the different mix of setups that we've got going here. Lots of ITX setups as well, which is really cool to see. But if you're interested in this kind of setup where I kind of rate or react to kind of what you guys have got going on, definitely leave a comment down below, and we might do a few more in the future. As always, a huge thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.